On a moonless night, when the world was still gripped by the ongoing conflict in Gaza, the Israeli Air Force suddenly launched an unprecedented operation called Summit of Fire. The attack struck directly at the heart of the capital city Doha, shattering all traditional rules of warfare and sending shockwaves throughout the entire Middle East. Without warning, without prior notice, there was only fire smoke and a chilling message from Tel Aviv. No place is safe for Hamas, not even Qatar. Over 700 kilometers of distance that seemed impossible was torn apart by precision bombs from Israel's most elite squadron. A building in the center of Doha where a top-secret meeting of Hamas's leadership was taking place was reduced to rubble in just a few minutes. And along with it, the faith in the diplomatic buffer between war and politics vanished into dust. In today's program, we will explore the most secretive military operation in modern Israeli history, tracing the journey of the bombs that fell in the heart of Doha, and uncovering the calculations that could upend the order in the Middle East. We invite you to join us. Ladies and gentlemen, in an action described as unprecedented and causing global shock, the Israeli Air Force unexpectedly launched a deep airstrike into the center of Qatar's capital, Doha, directly targeting the political leadership of the Hamas organization. The operation, codenamed Summit of Fire, was greenlit by Israel's security cabinet, but was not shared with the entire government, highlighting the utmost secrecy and absolute surprise of this mission. The distance from Israeli territory to Doha is over 1,770 kilometers, but that did not stop at least 10 Israeli Air Force aircraft from crossing the airspace of multiple countries to drop a series of precision bombs on a building where a secret meeting of Hamas's leadership was underway. The targeted site was where Hamas was discussing a ceasefire proposal backed by Washington. This has led observers to believe that Israel wants to strangle any negotiation efforts with a deadly blow. The attack was tightly coordinated from Shin Bet's command center, with the presence of Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, Defense Minister Yoav Gallant, along with top security officials. According to military sources, the decision to carry out this operation was approved weeks earlier, after a long period of intelligence gathering and meticulous planning. Hamas confirmed that 5 members were killed, including the son and close aide of Khalil al-Hayya, the Hamas leader in Gaza. Although they claimed that high-level negotiators survived, the organization provided no evidence to prove it. The list of those present at the secret meeting included key figures: Khalid Mashal Saleh al-Aruri, the Hamas leader in Judea and Samaria, Mohammed Deif, leader of the Shura Council, and Khalil Mashal, the exiled Hamas leader. Although Hamas declared that Israel's operation had failed, in reality, the organization often keeps its losses secret for weeks, even months. On the Israeli side, military officials believe that some high-ranking Hamas figures were injured or killed, but more time is needed to verify. International reactions so far have been harsh, but Israel seems undeterred. This is a steel-fisted message. Even Doha is no longer a safe haven for Hamas. The Summit of Fire operation is not just a long-range military strike, but also a strategic turning point, marking the first time Israel has carried out an overt military action on the sovereign territory of Qatar. This is an unprecedented move, implemented after numerous tough statements from Israel's military leadership, especially from the Chief of Staff, who has repeatedly warned that there will be no safe zones for Hamas leaders, whether inside or outside Gaza. In Tel Aviv, this action is seen as closing the circle in a comprehensive retaliation against those who planned the October 7th attack. In a statement issued after the airstrike, Shin Bet reaffirmed its strategic commitment to pursuing Hamas commanders anywhere on the Middle East map, excluding no country, including those considered diplomatic neutral grounds. In a television address, Ofer Gendelman from Israel's Defense and Security Forum emphasized that the operation is clear proof that Israel has crossed the boundaries it once set for itself. They no longer accept the parallel existence of peace negotiations on one side and harboring a genocidal organization on the other. According to him, many Israelis believe that Qatar has nurtured and protected Hamas for years, and the October 7th attack was the final straw. In that context, Prime Minister Netanyahu and defense officials publicly taking responsibility right after the operation ended was a calculated move. Initially, there were reports that President Trump had greenlit this operation, but later he distanced himself somewhat, calling it a regrettable action without condemning Israel's targeting of Hamas. According to expert Ofer Gendelman, that's the typical way diplomacy operates. Washington wants to maintain a balanced role in the region, but does not prevent allies from acting when vital interests are threatened. With Hamas continuing to evade negotiations and Qatar gradually losing its mediator role, Israel has decided to strike decisively. In response to Doha's statement that it is considering retaliation options, experts believe the likelihood of Qatar retaliating militarily is very low. Any further actions by Doha will have to be carefully weighed to avoid triggering a full-scale confrontation in the region. The deep airstrike into the center of Doha is not merely a long-range military operation, but a deliberate warning strike directly at Hamas's political logistics center abroad. In the context of October 8th, a bloody terrorist attack occurred in Jerusalem, killing 6 Jews. Tel Aviv's decision becomes even more understandable. Every day Hamas exists, every day Qatar harbors them, is another day blood continues to spill on Israel's streets. At the gateway to Jerusalem, 2 gunmen suddenly opened fire at a bus stop on Jaffa Road. The 6 victims killed were all Jerusalem residents. The incident also injured 10 others, 5 of whom are in critical condition. One gunman was neutralized by soldiers on site, and the other was taken down by an armed civilian. The response is not just military, but also symbolic. In recent statements, Israeli military experts affirm that Qatar's harboring of Hamas is essentially a form of daily retaliation. A country that allows the masterminds of murder to take refuge is considered a sanctuary for terrorism, similar to the concept of sanctuary cities for criminals within the United States. According to Israel, this tough action sends a clear message. Any country that harbors Hamas will be held directly accountable. As for tactical effectiveness, analysts say it's not yet confirmed whether Israel eliminated the entire Hamas leadership. But clearly this operation has sent a global deterrent message. On the other hand, reactions from Western powers have been deeply disappointing. While the White House maintains a strategic silence, countries like the UK and France have chosen to condemn Israel instead of questioning Qatar, a nation that continues to invest billions of dollars in academic media and political sectors in Europe and the United States. The scandal at the European Parliament was once evidence of the subtle influence Doha has quietly built. The geopolitical landscape is becoming more complex than ever. In Israel's eyes, one thing has become undeniable. Once a country harbors terrorism, its sovereign borders become legitimate targets for military deterrent strategies. The perpetrators of the latest attack have been identified as Palestinian residents from villages near the scene located just across the security fence, who illegally infiltrated Israeli territory. The attack, which killed 6 people in broad daylight at a bus stop, raises serious questions about border control around the capital. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu was at the scene right after the incident, showing the gravity with which Tel Aviv views this event. From the perspective of local authorities, the incident evokes memories of the bloody era of the Second Intifada, when bus bombings, suicide attacks, and daily shootings turned Jerusalem into an urban war zone. Security reports indicate that the 2 attackers may have been supported by elements inside East Jerusalem. This is an alarming reality as murderers are now stepping into the heart of Israel, not just from Gaza or the West Bank, but potentially aided by those living nearby, working in hospital shops, or even private homes. After 2001, the security wall built around the city was seen as an effective shield, reducing attacks by over 90%. However, reality shows that even the most advanced security system cannot be completely airtight. About 5% of plots still slip through, and even a small fraction succeeding is enough to cause major tragedies with heavy casualties. One of the biggest challenges now is identifying who is a real threat in a multi-ethnic, multicultural city like Jerusalem. Many in East Jerusalem are not Israeli citizens, but still live, work, and benefit from the city's economic policies. However, after the October 7th attack, the sense of security has been severely shattered. Terrorists involved in the Gaza massacre previously worked as helpers, builders, or guards in Israeli homes. The Jerusalem attack is no longer an isolated event, but an extension of a systematic chain of threats supported from both outside and inside the borders. That said, it's important to note that the majority of East Jerusalem residents have nothing to do with extremist acts. They desire stable lives and benefit from peace. However, the existence of a faction willing to aid terrorism has left security authorities unable to be complacent. And until the line between civilians and enemies is no longer blurred, all protective measures, from security fences to population controls, must be tightened to the maximum. Security in the capital is at the highest alert level since October 7th, and the internal security puzzle is now Tel Aviv's and the Israeli police's top priority. Gaza City has officially become the hottest battlefield in the Middle East, as the Israel Defense Forces IDF issued an evacuation order for all civilians, a move unprecedented in the history of military operations in the Gaza Strip. With the requirement to withdraw from the entire city area, this is seen as preparation for a large-scale ground assault targeting the remaining Hamas forces entrenched in the urban center. Previously, Israel's warnings were limited to specific neighborhoods or buildings, but this time the order applies to the entire population, marking a clear escalation. Residents are directed to move south in Gaza along coastal routes in designated humanitarian areas, and they are provided with hotlines to report any obstruction of evacuation by Hamas. According to the IDF, an estimated 150,000 Palestinians have left Gaza City following this directive so far, and the number continues to rise hourly. This is one of the largest civilian evacuations in the region since the beginning of the 21st century. Alongside that, the fighting remains fierce. In a surprise attack near the edge of Gaza City, Hamas killed 4 Israeli soldiers. All were from Battalion 52, Armored Brigade 401, the force playing a key role in the operation to capture Gaza City. May their souls rest in peace. Meanwhile, Jerusalem continues to tighten security surveillance, especially in areas at risk of radicalization. Villages in East Jerusalem are still closely monitored, both on the ground and on social media platforms, to detect any early signs of extremism. City authorities view monitoring public sentiment online as a key measure to prevent terrorism from the outset. Regarding the plan reportedly from President Donald Trump to push for an agreement with Hamas, observers are still awaiting more details. However, with Hamas being cornered both on the battlefield and in diplomatic channels, the possibility of reaching a fragile agreement cannot be ruled out. The situation in the Gaza Strip continues to escalate after a bold ambush by 3 Hamas gunmen targeting an Israeli forward base in the Jabalia area on the outskirts of Shujaiya, the periphery of Gaza City. According to the IDF's initial investigation, the attack occurred right after soldiers returned to the base from a nighttime operation. Taking advantage of the vulnerability, the terrorist group approached an open-hatch tank, firing directly at the commander, observing from above. They then threw an explosive device into the interior compartment, killing 4 Israeli soldiers on the spot. Forces at the base quickly responded with firepower, hitting at least 2 of the attackers. The incident once again underscores Hamas's desperate fighting capability and asymmetric tactics, turning residential areas into battlefields and using surprise attacks to inflict casualties on Israeli forces as the organization is gradually encircled on all fronts. Meanwhile, on the political and social front, Israeli public opinion remains divided over the airstrike targeting Hamas leaders in Qatar's capital, Doha. Some families with relatives held hostage in Gaza expressed outrage, believing this military action could destroy negotiation opportunities and endanger the hostages. However, another group known as the Forum has voiced strong support for the operation. This group argues that Israel's strike on Hamas leadership abroad is long overdue and provides a strategic advantage. In their view, victory is impossible without maximum pressure on Hamas, and attacking the leadership is a necessary step to force the enemy to surrender, thereby paving the way for hostage rescues. In a related development, Israel is expected to receive an Iraqi hostage freed by Hamas after more than 2.5 years in captivity. This is a rare positive signal amid stalled negotiations and increasingly intense fighting. The airstrike operation into Doha, where Hamas's political command is based, continues to spark intense debate in Israel, especially from families with relatives held hostage. While some groups support the operation as a necessary strong move to force Hamas to yield, others, like the Hostage Forum and families of the missing, have voiced opposition, expressing deep concern that this operation will destroy chances for a rescue agreement. According to revealed information, the airstrike occurred precisely when Hamas leaders were meeting about a U.S.-led proposal that could lead to the release of all 48 hostages. Analysts believe the timing of the attack was not coincidental. The relative of one victim, Tammy, who was killed in the October 7th attack and whose body is still held by Hamas in Gaza, reacted strongly to the news. In her statement, while expressing no regret at seeing Hamas leaders punished for their crimes, she emphasized that bringing loved ones home for burial still requires negotiation. There is no clear evidence yet on whether the operation to assassinate Hamas leadership affects the negotiation process. Some Israeli officials believe it could create pressure, forcing Hamas to accept new conditions. According to the Jerusalem Post, the Israeli negotiator G, representing Israel in hostage discussions, stated that Hamas leadership in Doha is the biggest obstacle to reaching an agreement. In a separate but related development, President Donald Trump announced overnight that a hostage with dual Israeli-Russian citizenship, Elizabeth Surkov, has been released after nearly 3 years, held by Kataib Hezbollah, an Iran-backed armed group in Iraq. Surkov, a student at Princeton University, was kidnapped in May 2023 while conducting a research project in Iraq. During her captivity, she was reportedly tortured, and a proof-of-life video was released by the kidnappers over a year ago. Currently, Surkov is being cared for at the U.S. Embassy in Iraq and is expected to be brought back to Israel in the coming days. She will undergo a recovery program for hostages, including physical and psychological support. Her family expressed overwhelming joy, but observers are still questioning the conditions behind her release. It's unclear what concessions the U.S. and Israel made in exchange for her freedom. As tensions have yet to subside, the Israel Defense Forces struck again on another front. An airstrike targeting a Hezbollah military training base in northeastern Lebanon killed at least 5 members of the group, demonstrating determination to preempt threats on both the northern and southern borders of Israel. The Israel Defense Forces, IDF, just carried out a rare deep airstrike into northeastern Lebanon, near the Syrian border, far from Israel's border, directly targeting a Hezbollah military training base. The destroyed target was identified as a training facility for the elite Radwan Force, the main special operations unit in Hezbollah's cross-border attack plans. Although the ceasefire agreement reached in November last year remains in effect on paper, Hezbollah's repeated violations, including redeploying forces and stockpiling weapons north of the Litani River, prompted Israel to act. Israel accuses Hezbollah of refusing to disarm as committed while continuing to use civilian areas and border regions for training fighters. Israel views this as a direct threat to national security. IDF spokesperson Avichai Adraei, responsible for Arabic communications, stated that the Israeli Air Force precisely struck Hezbollah's positions and military infrastructure used for training, in shooting weapon use, and planning terrorist operations. He emphasized that any such military deployments are serious violations of agreements between Israel and Lebanon. The IDF's official statement affirms that the IDF will continue to act to eliminate any threats to the state of Israel and prevent Hezbollah from reestablishing a military presence in Lebanon. This stance reflects Tel Aviv's increasingly tough position against Hezbollah's covert military actions, an organization backed by Iran. This attack is seen as a strategic message Israel is ready to preemptively strike, not only in border areas but deep inside Lebanon, to dismantle any quietly building military posture against Israel. Ladies and gentlemen, our video time has come to an end. Thank you for your attention and for following along.